Hello there, it's Tom here, and this is chapter 21 of Gunnerkrigg Court, Blinking. And the chapter starts off back at Kat's workshop. And I like this chapter because it goes into some of the behind-the-scenes stuff, universe-wise, in this comic, such as how some of the magic works, and some of the details that have just been hinted at so far. We see that Annie and Renard are a little bit weird with each other, considering the stuff that Annie found out about him in the previous chapter. But thanks to Kat's brilliant diplomacy skills, she gets them to make up and be friends again. We also see that after the discovery of Jean's portrait and the tomb of robots underneath Kat's workshop, that several robots have been coming by just to go and see the painting. And not sure what happened here, but it looks like I forgot to draw this page. But anyway, Kat's mom, Anya, comes along with the intention of showing Annie how her blinker stone works, imparting some of the major rules with the stone, namely, A, that you can never lose it, and B, that you can look through it like a lens. At least someone like Annie can. And this is the first instance we see of Annie looking into the ether, as it were. And I wanted a way of drawing these sections that would separate these out from the usual look of the comic, and just by simply giving Annie some flowing hair and doing some shading on her skin and hair and clothes, I think the effect gives a feeling of looking into the ether quite well. I imagine it like being underwater, with Annie's hair flowing about her and you being able to just make out what's in front of you. And this is a visual thing that I use a lot more often later on in the comic, when Annie comes to use the blinker stone a lot more often, and it's something that not only do I enjoy drawing every time I do one of these scenes, but they seem to be sections that the readers really enjoy looking at. I always get some good response from readers when I do a scene like this. And Annie's long, sort of snaking hair sort of became a very signature look for Annie and for the comic itself. One thing that I felt that I didn't do quite so well on this particular scene here is that everything outside of the immediate area of the stone and where Annie was would be in a very distorted fisheye lens. I tried to mimic that look here by just curving the horizon and the roof that the stone would be on, but I think I probably would have got a better effect if I had gone through the trouble of mocking up at least a very basic outside section and horizon in 3D and then using lens effects to distort it in 3D, but what are you going to do? They only really have a finite amount of time to work on each page, and while it might not be perfect, I think it gets the point across. Oh, and a key point here as well is that Anya says that Annie's a natural at using the stone, because she seems to take to using it quite easily. And here as well, Anya explains one of the large differences between certain characters in the universe of Gunnerkrigg Court, whereby some characters are able to look through and use the ether, and some simply just are not. She explains that Kat's dad, Donald, is not able to, and neither is Jones for reasons hitherto unknown. But people like Annie and Anya are a lot more sensitive to etheric forces, as they were, and using devices such as the blinker stone are able to manipulate them. Here Anya calls it a lens for thought. So, while magical gubbinses have only been hinted at so far in the comic, really, Annie gets straight to the heart of the matter and asks Anya straight up if she is a magician, because she's seen Anya do what could be called magical spells when she was binding Renard and other things like that in the past. And so it's time we had a sit down and a talk about these issues. Incidentally, this little room that they go into, this room that they go into was actually a part of my dad's office, and I remember it well because on Saturdays my dad would take my sister and I over to his work when he was just there to do some work over the weekends, and we always used to come over and take paper from the, from the photocopy machine and draw little comics on them. And the seats that they're sitting on as well, I always remember that the cushion parts of the seats would come off. And the seats themselves were just very basic, like plywood boxes with upholstery on them. And I remember whenever I would find any like spare change laying around the office, I would hide them inside the seats. And it wasn't really until a lot later that I realized I was doing something bad. I have no excuse other than I was just some jackass kid messing around in someone's office, but I don't know if you can call it stealing, because, I never took the money home. All I can assume is that one day when my dad dismantled his office and took the chairs apart or threw them away, somebody found, I don't know, like £1 or £2 worth of 5 and 10 pences hidden in them. Anyway, I don't know, maybe that goes some way to explaining Annie's behavior in certain parts. Anyway, back to more serious business. And here I am a little bit unfair on Kat, because Anya asks if the girls believe in magic, and Annie says yes, and Kat says no. In all fairness to Kat, if magic was as present as it was in this world, in the world of Gunnerkrigg that is, it is probably on some observable level which would come under the heading of a science. And I have been called out for this a few times in the past. And while I don't disagree with that, I think the direction that I take the discussion of science and magic in this particular situation tries to draw a very defined line between the two of them. And so yes, while things in our real world that may not be explained by science don't make them magic, that topic is a lot more vague in this universe. Because in this universe, while you might have observable supernatural effects like Coyote doing strange things, there is no way to reproduce those sort of effects or study them in what would be called a scientific setting or a sterile environment. So I fully admit that there is some artistic license taken here with the scientific method, but there you go. In this world, the court is happy to categorize anything that is not explained by science as an etheric science. And while we see that Anya herself has spent a lot of time dealing in these sort of sciences and starts talking about her computer and the fact that Donald is able to do certain things outside of his normal human abilities thanks to the powers that her computer bestows on him, we sort of get the impression that the court itself doesn't really put a lot of import on these sort of supernatural sciences. We also take a quick break to see that Annie is taken to using her stone to spy on Renard. But of course, Renard points out that using a blinker stone to spy on someone who can also use a blinker stone to look into the ether may not be a very wise choice. And basically, again, Anya points out that her abilities are really only able to manifest themselves thanks to a large and very vague computer that she and her husband have worked on that is hidden away somewhere. And anyway, we find out another little fact of the blinker stone, and that is that it's usually given between couples. And we know that Mort has given Annie the stone. So after that, they go and see the all-happy guy Mort. And Annie flips out on him, seemingly for no reason. It's almost as if she doesn't like it when these spirit creatures meddle with her life. But it turns out that it was Mutt who gave this stone to Mort, who then passed it on to Annie. So after Annie makes a big boob of herself, it's off to the science lab to call old Alface himself and ask him what the dealio. We see that in their own manipulative way they've been trying to get Annie to help them collect Jean's spirit from the bottom of the ravine, which Annie is none too pleased about. And so, since this is a chapter full of people getting straight to the point, Kat asks what is the deal with Annie and the psychopomps. And we find out that on the night that Annie's mom died, none of them came to collect her, so Annie had to take her mom's spirit to the afterlife herself. And Kat is none too pleased with this. And so, with all that business dealt with, Annie asks for a quick little favour, which allows me to draw a big sort of splash panel like this, another thing that I enjoy working on. And to draw these guys, I just used lots of reference from myths all around the world. And what a surprise, it turns out, it is just a joke, and it's an attempt by Annie to reconcile with Mort. And the bonus page is good old Renard, who, having read all these books, just wants something new to read. And this first panel here is basically an exact replica of my desk and shelves that I used to have at my parents' house. Complete possibly with the Nancy Drew books that I used to read, because Nancy Drew kicked ass. So shut up. And that's it for this chapter. Come back again for chapter 22, Ties.